Prime Minister and Chair of the Emergency Operations Center, the Honorable Silveria Jacobs, epidemiologist and head of the Department of Collective Prevention Services, Mrs. Ava Lister DeWeaver, Police Chief Commissioner, ESF 5 Coordinator Carl John, Secretary General and ESF 7 Coordinator, Ms. Joy Arnell, Secretary General and ESF 10 Coordinator, Mr. Miguel DeWeaver, Head of Public Health and ESF 6 Coordinator, Ms. Fenna Arnell, Public of St. Martin, radio listeners, and online viewers, good afternoon. I'm Cedric Peterson. Welcome to this EOC press conference of April 17th, 2020, to update you on matters related to the COVID-19 developments and mitigation efforts of St. Martin, the government of St. Martin. At this time, I invite the Prime Minister and Chair of the Emergency Operations Center, the Honorable Silveria Jacobs, to deliver her opening remarks. Prime Minister, you have the floor. Unmute your microphone for me, Prime Minister. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Cedric. I failed again today. I would like to say a good afternoon to all of my colleagues of the EOC here, as well as the reporters in the press conference, the virtual press conference, as well as all those following this broadcast via whichever medium. It is with, not necessarily a heavy heart. It's the end of the week. It's been a very long week. We've been in meetings constantly and still finalizing, together with all stakeholders, the national decree to be able to extend the state of emergency as has been proposed for the next 3 weeks. We are looking at 3 days, whereby this will be the case that we will allow for persons to, even though the 24-hour lockdown is in effect, we will allow for persons to make use of the supermarkets and grocery stores, bakeries, pharmacies and pharmaceutical suppliers, gas stations, as well as wholesale distribution and retail of cooking gas, banks, and that during the week from Monday to Saturday, that deliveries, of course, would still continue. This is an effort to mitigate that we are able to allow CPS to carry out its much needed testing and assessment in the communities, as well as still to allow persons to be able to get much needed food and supplies. So we encourage general population, though we are allowing, just like you did today, just like you did yesterday. We noticed there was a rush in the morning, but by mid-afternoon that it was pretty quiet. So you know in advance that there will be several opportunities for you. We are encouraging persons to shop only once per week and to make use of that time one by one. So families are being asked to only travel one person to the supermarket or other essential service that is necessary. Do not have more than 2 persons in a car, if necessary to have 2, and that the second person would sit in the back seat behind the passenger side. As per before the lockdown, the first hour of shopping is designated specifically for the elderly, disabled, and pregnant women. However, I'm told that no matter what time a senior arrives, they will have preference over others. We will be good corporate citizens, we will be good community citizens, and not have our seniors standing in line. Where persons are standing in line, proper social distancing must be adhered to. Only one person, as I mentioned, per family would be allowed to stand in line. Person should wear protective face gear, and this includes masks. I'm hoping that our medical professionals will show the proper ways to use them, because we've heard of quite some horror stories. Persons should also refrain from contacting each other, hugging, kissing, and handshakes. Though we are a very cultural, loving, and open people, during this time, being loving and touching with persons that you do not know the status of can be detrimental to your health. So we are advising against that. And the supermarkets and grocery stores should have proper markings outside and inside of their stores, including in the queue for the cashier, observing a social distance of 1.5 to 2 meters between clients. Clearly marked arrows showing one directional traffic in all aisles as well. and social distancing should be monitored by the owners and or management of the store, as well as the maximum number allowed inside the store. Because different supermarkets have different sizes, we're not holding a strict 20-person rule, but it would totally depend on being able to maintain that, let's say 1.5 to 2 meters inside the store at all the various locations inside. Most definitely within the aisles, there should literally be only one person in the aisle at a time going in one direction. The supermarkets are also expected to provide some type of sanitation at the entrance of the supermarket and grocery store for customers, and ensure that the shopping carts and baskets are properly sanitized after each use. I've noted that in several communities that the community leaders have assisted the grocery store owners in keeping order outside, and I know that the Ministry of TIAT will also update on that in his presentation. I would like to once again encourage the general public to ensure that as much as possible delivery is being used, and that we take into consideration that the reason for this lockdown is one of a public health. We are looking out for your health. We are doing our best to ensure that you remain healthy, and we are trying our best to ascertain our real numbers, because yes, we do believe there are more out there, and the only way to stop the spread is to properly isolate and keep those persons from being in contact with others. So as such, I would like to pass the word now through you, Cedric, to our professionals on the panel.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for your opening remarks. And as the Prime Minister indicated, and of course, we are dealing with a health matter. We'd like to hear from the experts on this subject matter. First, to address the issue will be Head of Public Health and the ESF 6 Coordinator, Ms. Fenna Arnell. I invite her to address you at this time. Fenna, you have the floor.
Cedric, thank you so much, listeners. Thank you, Cedric. I believe I would actually like you to begin with Ms. Ava Lister-DeWeaver, who's going to provide us the updated information with the stats and the projects that are ongoing at CPS first.
Okay, not a problem. So let's take it from the epidemiologist aspect, and I invite the epidemiologist of St. Martin and head of the Collective Prevention Services Department, Mrs. Ava Lister-DeWeaver, to address you. Mrs. Ava Lister-DeWeaver, you have the floor. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Cedric. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to provide an update on the latest statistics first from CPS. So currently there are 64 confirmed cases, of which all contacts have been identified and are currently being monitored by CPS. As the Prime Minister just mentioned, to contain the epidemic, we continue to focus our resources and our efforts on the backbone of our response, which is isolating, testing, and contact tracing. I also wanted to inform listeners that CPS has received additional staffing support from the Netherlands, and we welcome Jane van Ommen, who is a public health nurse in Utrecht, and she will be assisting CPS in the field. So we are also currently working with volunteers to actively canvass neighborhoods to identify persons who are displaying any flu-like signs and symptoms. The reason we're doing this work and going into the community is to make the testing more accessible, to make the process more efficient, and to reach as many people as we can. I encourage persons who are symptomatic to either alert volunteers when you see them in your neighborhood, or to call your doctor or 914. And I would like to just reiterate that please do not hesitate to do so. We're there to, as the Prime Minister said, find persons early on, and the sooner we identify cases or suspected cases, the sooner we can contain further transmission and ensure that persons receive proper care and follow-up. I also want to reiterate that testing is free of charge, and your information will remain confidential and used only for health reasons and not shared broadly beyond CPS and your doctor. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the volunteers and the staff of CPS, who over the past couple of days and weeks have been out in the neighborhoods gathering information on the front line. Once the next neighborhood is identified, we will be sure to broadcast this via the government channels and various outlets. And I would also like to take this opportunity again to remind everyone of the importance of continuing to practice social distancing, cough and sneeze etiquette, and hand washing, as these are the most effective ways of reducing exposure and transmission. For healthy people who choose to wear a mask, it's important that you also adhere to proper hand hygiene. If you choose to wear a mask, clean your hands with soap and water or alcohol. Properly cover your mouth and nose with the mask and make sure that there are no gaps between your face and the mask. Avoid touching the mask when you're using it. And if you do happen to touch your mask, make sure to clean your hands. It's also important that you replace the mask frequently. So as soon as it's damp, replace it, and you don't reuse the mask. If it's single-use mask, you have to dispose of that. And it's equally important to make sure that you're actually removing the mask in a proper way as well. So not touching the front of the mask, but removing it from behind. And when you do remove it, immediately discard it and throw it in a closed bin. And again, once you dispose of the mask, to actually, again, clean your hands with soap and water or alcohol-based hand rub. And I believe my colleague Fenna will be demonstrating, because I don't have a mask with me, unfortunately. But I just wanted to take this opportunity again to remind the public that, information is power. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to call 914. Reach out to your GP. Stay up to date with the government website. There's a lot of information on there. And I look forward to any questions, but truly it's a community effort, and we are advocating that everyone just be on alert and feel free to reach out to CPS if they are experiencing any influenza-like illness. And the sooner we can identify, the sooner we can tackle and overcome this epidemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Evarista DeWeaver, for your opening remarks. At this time, I'd like to now invite the Head of Public Health and our ESF 6 Coordinator, Ms. Fenna Arnell, to address you. Fenna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Cedric. Good evening, listeners and viewers. To add to what Ava just indicated, as it's all part of the ESF 6 activities, I would like to focus on the SMMC's activities for this week. I am proud to indicate that SMMC's admission capacity will be increased this weekend. The pavilion, which is dedicated to providing medium care with a bed capacity of 14 beds, will be operational this weekend, as well as the Hospitainer, which is an intensive care unit dedicated to COVID positive patients, will also be operational this weekend. In addition to that, White and Yellow Cross has created space in order to admit persons who are no longer in need of hospital care, but will need longer nursing care. They have ensured that those patients can be admitted to the White and Yellow Cross, so that there's available space at the SMMC to deal with the overcapacity that is expected due to COVID. And to add to what Ava was indicating, I'm really honestly so proud of our community as I see so many persons practicing the use of face masks. I must say that I have to tell many people on a consistent basis, use it properly. And my mother constantly tells me, Fenna, but you have to tell them how to do it. So I'm going to try to demonstrate the proper use of masks. This is my little small hand pocket sanitizer. I will sanitize my hands. Can you see, Cedric? Yes? And then I'll take my mask by the, what do you call this? By the handle, stretch it, put it over make sure that the iron piece is on top, sorry, that's this. Put it over my nose and my mouth. Cover my ears, put it under my chin, over my nose, squeeze, and make sure that it's covered. After having done this, I am not, if I want to talk and I want to speak clear, because you can't hear me with the mask on, I should not be doing this. I should actually be doing this. Oops, sorry, my glasses came off of it. Sorry. I should actually be doing this. By doing this, I am not contaminating the mask with my hands. When I do this, I'm contaminating it. I'm putting it on my contaminated neck and then reapplying it to my face, which is actually increasing my risk of actually infecting myself, because when the mask is on, I am busy touching my neck, touching my face, touching all over, and in between, I'm not sanitizing my hands. So it's important indeed to use your masks in order to prevent transmission. However, it's important to use your masks properly. I will, during the course of this week, make sure that there's an interview organized with DCOM and CPS to ensure that proper mask use is going to be highlighted with DCOM. And hopefully by doing that, the persons who are using the masks will improve their use of masks. I would also like to thank the public, really love to thank the public for how they actually behaved during these past 2 days. I have seen social distancing to its utmost. I am seeing the elbow bumps, the foot bumps. I am seeing the distance between the lines at the supermarkets, at the pharmacies. In some areas, we still have to improve, but I'm definitely seeing persons who are actually trying their utmost and actively indicating to persons, whoa, give me my space. And that's the direction we would have to go if we want to really, really, really crush this disease. And that's it, Cedric.
Thank you very much, Fenna. Really appreciate the explanation of how to properly use our face masks during this time that we're dealing with this issue of COVID-19. So thank you very much for your opening remarks. At this time, I'd like to now invite the next speaker to address you, and head of the ESF 7 coordinator and Secretary General of the Ministry of Public Health, Social Development and Labor. I'd like to invite Ms. Joy Arnell at this time to address you. Ms. Arnell, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Cedric, for this opportunity. I just want to assure the general public that we are continuing with our community outreach as it pertains to ensuring that persons have food. We have, as you've known, that from the government perspective, actually with organizations, been able to hand out 1,500 different care packages over the last week. And I am so happy to say that this community effort is not only a government effort, but there are numerous NGOs and individuals that are also reaching out to persons who are needy and who need some kind of assistance with food, have been giving out packages. I've been hearing all kinds of stories and from all corners, and it is just a beautiful St. Martin cultural effort in terms of how people are reaching out. I do understand there's still quite a number of persons who are in need, and we're trying our best to reach those as well. We were able to today and between today and tomorrow, we'll be getting the next set of items to be able to package another 1,500 boxes. But besides that, I met today with several organizations. I met with the K1 Britannia organization, Red Cross organization, White and Yellow Cross, Freegan Foods, ADRA, the St. Martin Development Fund, and Domino's Pizza, all organizations who have been active in the community giving products to different households to ensure that persons have. And these organizations are all contributing together so that we will be able to go into the community again next week to be able to continue giving. Tomorrow, these organizations, there where they have, will continue and will ensure that another set of packages can go out to the community. I want to thank every single person, the organizations, the individuals that are reaching out to their sisters, their brothers, their neighbors, people who are giving, because without them, we would not be able to reach the people that we are reaching at this time. I also want to give thanks to the businesses that are helping us. I have CTC and Harbor who, without them, we wouldn't be able to get the products and to be able to unpack products and package products. and their assistance, and their generous assistance has really helped us to be able to get things in flow. I want again to just assure the general public that we are really doing our best, and together with all the organizations, we will be able to reach the majority of persons who are in need.
Thank you very much, SK, for your opening remarks. Now, for a look at how we're handling this, the mitigation of COVID-19 from the aspect of the tourism, economic affairs, telecommunications, and transportation aspect, I now invite the Secretary General of that respective ministry and ESF 10 coordinator, Mr. Miguel DeWeaver, to address you. Secretary General DeWeaver, you have the floor.
Thank you and good evening all. I must say up front that I have a little bit of a lengthy discourse that I would like to share, because I think it's extremely important that we emphasize some things so that persons are aware of the approach of government and the issues that and the process that we take to come to and make the decisions that we do, and to support our Prime Minister in the process. Usually our Prime Minister, at the end of her discourse, she usually ends with some biblical encouragement and verse, and I would start with mine today, and it's Hebrew 11 verse 1. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And the reason I start with that, because when we make certain decisions, we do it on the best of our ability of knowledge and experience and expertise to be able to hopefully make a decision that will be in the best interest of our community. And it's only when it actually unfolds is then when we actually see it. So we're making decisions without seeing the action and knowing the exact outcome. But I think today and these last 2 days was evidence of such. But before I go into that, because when we go back, it wasn't until April 4th persons were no longer allowed to shop freely and to buy groceries up until yesterday, April 16th. And in the interim, we allowed businesses to execute a delivery system, which in all honesty didn't really work as well as we had hoped for, as these stores weren't designed to operate and change their operation in such a short time. This led us to the decision-making process to allow persons to once again to be able to shop at the grocery stores and supermarkets. This process was no easy task, as we used the health status of the country, meaning the extent of the COVID-19 problem in St. Martin. And in understanding, we need to first try to contain and mitigate the spread of the virus. On the other side of the coin, the need for persons to have access to food was the other dilemma that we were faced with. And naturally, there are persons who may not have the means to buy large quantities of goods or to stock up. We know and we are aware that there are persons that may even have checks in their hands, but no banks to deposit their checks or cash their checks so they can buy groceries. Hence the reason why on Wednesday, April 15, the Honorable Prime Minister decided that we need to allow banks to open so that persons can have access to their money so they can purchase their groceries by cashing their checks. And obviously, to be able to feed their families, and especially the kids. No one, and far be it from this government, that we would want to deprive persons of being able to feed their families, and in particular their kids. So you can imagine the arduous task, considerations, and responsibility that we have been dealing with. We are cognizant that our community has a very diverse set of persons, where language barriers, income levels, life experiences all factor in and should factor in our decision making. Nevertheless, we had faith in our community that with all the information and in the language of our community, example Creole and Spanish, we were able to reach, educate, and make aware the seriousness of COVID-19. This faith was tried, tested, and demonstrated yesterday and today, April 16th and 17th. Naturally, after 12 days of a lockdown, The first day persons will definitely want to be the first person in line to ensure that they obtain their groceries. From our controls, 2 of the supermarkets had large crowds. Social distancing challenges and the strong arm of the law had to be called in, but once they arrived, everything went in control, everything went in order. Supermarkets were then encouraged to introduce a numbering system so that persons don't have to wait in lines and that they can spread out until their numbers are called. This alleviated the problem tremendously. The other supermarkets, there were also long lines, and as such, they provided additional tents so that their persons don't have to be waiting in the sun. As mentioned previously, naturally in the morning, the lines were expected and they were long. But as the day went on, the economic controls and the law enforcement helped for things to go smoother. And as a matter of fact, the lines became even shorter during the second half of the day. And even today, even more. That was the first day yesterday. The controls and the lines went down significantly. So naturally today as well, you didn't have as many lines. Besides those 2 supermarkets, all other supermarkets and grocery stores were observed and practicing good social distancing and crowd control, as well as not having long lines, specifically the smaller grocery stores in the various neighborhoods. And I must give extremely high praises for the Dutch Quarter community. They were very well organized. They took orders, they worked with young people in their community. They had persons sanitizing the store, they were sanitizing persons before they enter, handing out gloves, controlling the crowds. Persons were wearing masks or protective face protection. They were also social distancing. So I was extremely impressed, and this sets the standard for others, and we hope that these practices continue. It proves that our word, our information, our hard work has and is continuing to pay off. Of course, there are exceptions, but in the larger scheme and picture, the community has shown that they understand and take this COVID-19 very serious. In closing, I hope we continue to understand what we do, why we do, so that we prepare for the temporary sacrifices for the greater good, to not only defeat COVID, but to crush it and destroy it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General of the Ministry of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Telecommunications and Transportation, and our ESF 10 coordinator, Mr. Miguel DeWeaver. My final speaker for this afternoon, I'd like to invite the Police Chief Commissioner and ESF 5 coordinator, Mr. Carl Jean, to address you at this time. Chief Commissioner Carl Jean, you have the floor.
Thank you, Cedric. Good afternoon, all. I want to, just like the other speakers, congratulate the community of St. Martin for adhering to the measures. Most, we can say 90% of everyone who was moving around are observing social distancing, and it's going pretty well. Nevertheless, within the communities, we are still seeing gatherings. We are still seeing youngsters moving around irresponsible on their scooters and other vehicles moving around. So we want to ask also their cooperation to, as soon as possible, let's get rid of COVID. Next to that, I want to still give a little brief explanation on the Sea Weaver, and that's the weaver that will take you either to or from the French side. The explanation, the understanding that there is with the French side is that people who live on the Dutch side, people who reside on the Dutch side of the island, must request permission from the prefect to be on the French side. And the people who live on the French side can request their permission to be on the Dutch side to the Prime Minister, the Chief of Police, and when it comes to medical situations, also the Minister of Health. Very important. We are having a lot of challenges with this, but when we really look at it, it's because people really don't understand how the waiver is used and who to apply to. Where to apply, go to the government website you will find directions to apply both for the French and Dutch. So I want to stay very brief in this. I want to, again, congratulate the people of St. Martin. Stay positive, cooperate, but most of all, understand why these measures are taken. And they're taken to keep us all safe. I have more or less a lot of workers who every day come out very motivated to want to keep St. Martin safe. I'm just asking for your cooperation in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Police Chief Commissioner and our ESF 5 Coordinator, Carl John, for your opening remarks. If you're just joining us, you're viewing and listening to the Emergency Operations Center press conference of today, Friday, April 17th, 2020. At this time, I'd like to open the floor for questions that the media might have to our presenters at this time. The media joining us in our virtual press conference are representing the Island 92 radio station, Jeffrey Sockman, better known as Dr. Sock, and of course, SMN News Online, represented by Ms. Bibi Hart Shaw. I'd like to open the floor for these questions that the media might have, and I invite Ms. Shaw of SMN News Online to pose her questions. Bibi, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Cedric. Good afternoon, panel. My question is for the Prime Minister as well as the Chief of Police, Carl John. The banks on that side is open, but one of the things that I do not know if there's any provisions that was made for this, but lots of complaints about this. So I'd like, if there is any provision made for it, to explain. Persons living on the front side but working on the Dutch side and have received their checks or even transferred to their accounts were unable to cross the border to collect their monies. Even people that have pensions, people that worked in the United States, for example, and are collecting their pension from the United States, but they can only access their account through the ATMs on the Dutch side of the island. Is there any provisions made for these people to be able to at least access their monies so that they can also eat?
Thank you very much for your question. As you indicated, you're posing this to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Jacobs, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Cedric. Thank you, Ms. Shaw. I believe Chief John just reiterated the waiver system. Prior to a few days ago, both him and I were issuing the waivers for St. Martin's residents and the Ppress for the Saint Martin residents. However, there appear to be too many, and so we shouldn't determine who goes on the other side, so it was switched around. And now the Ppress is the one that would have to give the permission to the Dutch St. Martin residents to go to the front side, and we, Chief John and I, would give the permissions for those who have to come from the front side. So there is no reason for them not to be able to come, especially for banking, etc. In the days prior to these 2 days, we were on a shutdown, so that's why they wouldn't have been able to. But over the past 2 days, we have been able to allow the 3 days actually since Wednesday, checks to be cashed and more ATMs were available. So as far as I'm concerned, over the past 3 days, that has been possible. And when when our national decree goes into effect, extending the state of emergency on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, they will be allowed to do so. But of course, in a timely fashion, they would have had to make those requests.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your response. And Bibi, thank you very much for your question. I'd like to now ask Island 92 representative Jeffrey Sockman. Dr. Sock, good afternoon. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, Cedric. Good afternoon to the panel. Thank you to everyone for spending your Friday evening with us. Few questions this evening. I'm trying to decide where I should start. Let me start with our police chief, Carl John, if I might. Security continues to be a concern of many of our listeners and people that I speak with in the community. And you had mentioned that we still are seeing lots of youngsters kind of in the neighborhoods, people on the beaches. How, when and if folks observe this, what is the best way for them to contact you, to contact the police, to let them know that we have a social distancing issue, we have people in the neighborhood, people on the streets, people on the beaches, during days other than Monday, Wednesday, actually during any time, but not on the days when we're supposed to be out and about to do our essentials. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Jeff. Police Chief Commissioner Carl John, you have the floor.
Thanks for that question. It's very simple. Our 911 dispatch center accepts all those calls, and officers are instructed really to respond to those calls also. And as much as possible, we're trying to not create confrontations with the community, but try to give as much information as possible and try to have those persons adhere to the social distancing measures.
Thank you very much, Police Chief Commissioner. Thank you, SOC. Bibi Hatshaw, you have the floor. Bibi, you might want to unmute your microphone and take your question again, please.
Yes. Are you hearing me now?
I hear you now. Go right ahead.
All right. My question is for Miguel De Weaver, the SG for TIA. Mr. De Weaver, in your statement, in your presentation, you acknowledged that there are one or two supermarkets where there was a large crowd and social distancing was not fully respected. Since the shutdown on the Dutch side of the island, which is since around March 17th or a little earlier when all this started going on St. Martin, police, you can see that they are already burnt out. Does the Ministry of TIAT has inspectors assisting the police with the control at supermarkets that are not adhering to the guidelines laid down by government?
Okay, thank you very much for that question, Bibi. I appreciate it. We have intensified our controls, specifically focusing on the social distancing. We have about 10 controllers that are out there, in particular over these last 2 days, because we anticipated the crowd with 5 vehicles, so they are spread out. To make sure, and they're also doing all of the regular checks, but in particular also looking at the social distancing. So I think that is what we have been doing, and I intensified to make sure that is, how should I say, adhere. But again, I'm going to stress that it was happening primarily in the morning, but by before the 12 o'clock, there were proper space and proper social distancing, and I would even venture to say earlier than 12 o'clock. And there was only 2 places. I think one to introduce the numbering system, and that really alleviated the problem. And the other one, I guess, because people were standing in the sun, etc. But that happened. That was rectified rather quickly. But again, in the afternoon, it was the problem has truly dissipated yesterday, and today the problem was even far less. So I think once people were able to get what they needed, it was no longer a major problem.
Thank you very much, SK De Weaver. I'll allow a follow-up question from you, Bibi. You go ahead and unmute your microphone and pose your follow-up question. Thank you.
Miguel, are you hearing me, Cedric?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Go right ahead.
All right. Miguel, understandably, I will have to ask you or refer to you of case 31. When one infected person get in touch with another person, so I'm going to ask you that, if you can at least outline that for me. And the second thing is the Ministry of TIAT, Economic Affairs, issuing fines to these supermarkets that are not adhering to the social distancing and other measures laid down by government.
As a matter of fact, from the report I got, one entity did get a fine today. As a matter of fact, I don't know the specifics of it because I just got the report just before coming here. I will have it, some more details of it tomorrow, but one company did get a fine.
Thank you very much, S.K. DeWeaver, and thank you, BB, for your question. Jeff Sockran, Dr. Sock, you have the floor.
Thank you, Cedric. My next question is for Fenna Arnell, if I might. It really two-pronged. The first is you started to explain that both the pavilion, the hospitainer, the hospital had additional capacity. The White and Yellow Cross also had capacity. I'm curious as to what our total capacity is now for COVID treatment. And then also along the lines of COVID treatment, I've been reading something in the international news recently about a drug called remdesivir, and I'm wondering if that is part of the group of drugs that were sent to the island from the Netherlands. Wondering if we have any experience with that, and is that something that we're using in our treatment process?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for
Dr.
that
Sock, for your question. Fenna, you have the question from Dr. Sock. Please proceed.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Sock, for your question. The idea from SMMC was to dedicate the additional beds, the pavilion, solely to COVID patients. So when I talk about additional space, it means it's additional space outside of SMMC. So that space is 14 beds. That capacity is 14 beds for medium care and 6 intensive care beds. Regarding your second question, I will not be able to provide you that answer, so I will provide it to you in writing after having had that discussion with our hospital pharmacy.
Thank you very much. And the hospitainer has how many beds in it?
6 intensive care beds.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sock, for your question, and thank you, Fenna, for your response. BB Hot-Shaw, you have the floor.
Yes, my question is for Prime Minister Silveria Jacobs. Can you tell us, it's a two-part question, by the way, can you tell us how many outside assistants does the St. Martin Medical Center currently have? And if you know, can you tell us what's the accumulated cost for COVID-19 thus far for country St. Martin?
Thank you very much for your question, BB. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Cedric. Thank you, Ms. Shaw. I will start to answer this question, but then I would ask Ms. Arnell to assist me if possible, if she has the details at hand, as you're asking for quite some details there. The hospital, as mentioned before, started out with 3 IC beds and then also had 1 mobile. And now with the additional supplies provided, I think we gave that update earlier. They now have, let me see, I just got the update in front of me. This does not help much. Okay, we were supposed to receive 12 beds, 12 extra IC beds, and we received 6 and 12 IC units. So all the equipment, et cetera, et cetera. The 6 are set up in the tent-like structure that we see there, and several, Fenna can give you the whole breakdown, but there were at least 3 or 4 pages of not only materials, but also necessary medication for when you have that amount of ICU patients for a duration of time. I believe it was for 2 to 4 weeks worth of medication. So the pharmacy received medication, the hospital's pharmacy received medication, the hospital received materials, beds, etc. And of course, we got the 30 medical personnel that came in to assist as well. The pavilion was put there at government's expense and refurbished at government's expense to be able to be used as a hospital. So it's an extension of the hospital. So we, that extra space that Fenna just described with the possibilities for 14 beds, and the other gives us 20 extra beds. The hospital also did renovations in their regular rooms. So they moved rooms that were normally for 2 patients. When you enter 30, 31, or 31, 33, were converted into ICU rooms. So they built an entryway where the medical professionals would change, put on the clothes, etc., to go into the clean area. So they created more spaces. Plus, we gave them, I don't know, 4 or 6 containers, which they converted into holding areas for when they were checking out people for suspicious COVID, so that they did not mix with the rest of the population. So they were set up also with beds, etc., and had a restroom area as well. So the hospital actually went to quite some length, and I don't know what the total cost is, but I'm sure we could get that information at a later date. And Fenna can update you as to what government maybe has already spent on the health part of the COVID response.
Yes.
Fenna?
I can't give a number, I'm sorry, Madam Prime Minister and Ms. Shaw. I can only tell you it's a lot, but I really can't give you a number as to how much was really spent.
Okay.
I can try to verify that for you and also provide you that in writing.
I know, I can tell you this much, that initially when Fenna gave me some projections, just for what CPS was doing was over 2.4 million.
Wow.
Yes, wow.
And that projection did not include some unforeseen circumstances that we have now found ourselves in.
Fenna, can you tell me exactly if you have the number of personnel that they have, including the AMI people, the assistant, the outside assistants? I'm talking about personnel.
Okay, so outside assistants, as in who came in from outside, or including our volunteers, locally established persons?
Sorry, Michelle, go ahead and unmute your microphone. I just want to make sure that we have everyone's microphones muted as each person speaks. So unmute your microphone and pose the clarity that Ms. Arnell is asking for.
I need to have to know exactly how many outside, not our local volunteers, those that came in to assist the medical center, those from the Netherlands and those from the US. Exactly how much?
Okay, as Madam Prime Minister just indicated, we have 30 that came in for the St. Martin Medical Center, which were 28 from America and 2 from the Netherlands. No, sorry, 30 from America and 2 from the Netherlands. And
we have 32.
And for CPS, we have an additional of 4 staff members that came in. And that's a hygiene specialist, 2 an infection specialist, and a public health nurse. And we're expecting another public health nurse as well.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Fenna,
you.
for your
Thank you very
response.
much.
Thank you very much.
May I have a follow-up and interjection to follow up on Mrs. Shah's question? Sure,
go right ahead.
I got some clarification, not clarification, additional information regarding the fines that were actually issued. It was issued to a business of that was operating, was open to the public, that was not allowed to be open. And the reason I kind of interjected, because I want to remind persons that while the days that in the national decree that will be open to the public, it will only be those essential services that is listed in the national decree. It's not a free-for-all. It's not a regular open day for any and everybody. The businesses that were open were businesses that were not on the list of essential items. As a matter of fact, they were a cosmetic store, and that is not allowed.
Okay.
So certainly they were fined. And the other thing, we are enforcing certainly the social distancing, but we're advising the business and encouraging, obviously, the population to be able to adhere to the social distancing, because that helps us to prevent the spread. We don't want to close down an entire supermarket because 1 or 2 persons may not be adhering to social distancing. Because what happens when you close that supermarket? Where do the people go? To another supermarket, and then we have more crowds in fewer supermarkets. So obviously, we're not in the business of closing the supermarket, in particular in these times when people need food, and we are trying to work and advise them and help them to control the crowds And you know, we certainly appreciate the support that we get from the law enforcement, because when we see when they come, it's a big difference. The companies are advised to have their security personnel, but persons sometimes still don't listen to them, and you know, sometimes you have to intervene. But we are encouraging everyone, and I think everybody can do the job of also encouraging the other person next to them. We need to be, how you would say, we need our 1.5 to 2 meters space, and I think that message needs to permeate. The mass needs to be continue to be spread, even though we see it significantly, and that is what we are doing, so that because it's a health crisis that we're doing, that is really going that affecting us, and that's the role that we are playing.
Thank you very much, S.K. DeWeaver, for your additional points. I'd like to field some questions now that the public is actually posing to our panel this afternoon. Let's start with the 3 questions that I've received. One of them starting with can the testing be enforced? So we would like to pose this question either to representatives of our public health sector or the Prime Minister as chair. Who would like to take this question first? Again, the question is, can testing be enforced? Ms. Arnell?
I saw Prime Minister motion for me to answer. Testing can be imposed, but through a very a long process. And right now, at this current time, it will not be able to be imposed, because in order for testing to be imposed, we will first have to be isolated within a care institution that's dedicated to our care COVID-related isolation care institution. At this point in time, we do not have such, but what we can do is impose isolation. So if someone chooses not to be tested, we will have to, at this point in time, we will have to honor that request, but we can impose that they be isolated and be placed in a mandated isolation center.
Thank you very much, Ms. Arnell. Next question posed from our Facebook Live feed. Has the Department of Collective Prevention Services workers been tested before going into the districts? Has the CPS workers been tested before going into the districts?
So I'll take that one. Testing right now is primarily if you're symptomatic. So if you have signs and symptoms, like anybody, you should not be coming to work. So if our nurses who have been on the front lines since day one of this epidemic, of course, they wear proper PPE, they monitor themselves daily, but if they are displaying signs and symptoms, they know to stay at home and isolate themselves for 2 weeks, and then we would be tested. So right now, I'm happy to report, knock on wood, that my nurses are, monitoring their health actively, and will follow our protocol, which is to say, if you are experiencing signs and symptoms, to stay home.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lister DeWeaver, for your response. The next question we're getting from the public: can the government controllers check for price gouging at grocery stores? S.K. DeWeaver?
Yes, I think it's 2 things to that question. One is obviously, are the prices what we're talking about on the list of items that we have. We have a disaster list of maximum prices that's on the government website as well, and persons can see, how should I say, they can see the list of items and the maximum price associated with it, and they can always then report it. We need to obviously know what the product is, which store, what price they paid, and if they choose not to, they can just report it, and we will go and check it out. If they actually purchase the item, how should I say, then certainly we can then have with the legible proof that we need, meaning the receipt with the store, with the item and the price, and the date that they bought it. Obviously, we can then do the necessary, and then certainly give them a fine or warn them, whatever it's warranted. It is important that there's a difference made between, we have our maximum price and the violation of that versus price gouging. Price gouging is a whole nother subject matter, and that is something we definitely look into. One of the things we are doing, because I think that's sometimes not known, that price developments in the US, for example, are driving the prices of products in the local market, because we import our products from the United States, many of them, and in particular from the Florida area. So once their prices start to go up, such as eggs, that is a fact. That is a fact. We see it even in the US. We see it in the news. We did a research. We did a publication, an article that came out on April 3rd in the newspaper regarding those findings of the price of eggs, and that's why we see such a huge difference in the price of eggs. Others can have different prices because it depends where they are getting their product from, or if they've bought a large quantity, that they may still have that quantity. What you don't want is to set a price that's below what people are buying the product for, because guess what? They will just not bring it, because nobody's going to bring a product that ends up being, they can't charge, it's being charged below what they even bought it for, and then they will just prefer not to buy it. And then we don't want the market is missing fundamental products of goods and services that we may need. So I think we are being vigilant to make sure that certain prices are not, that businesses are not taking advantage of certain prices, and that's why we have our list of disaster items, and those are the items that we control.
Thank you very much, S.K. DeWeaver, for your response. We are pressed for time at this point, and I would like to pose this last question coming in from the public for the Prime Minister and Chair of the EOC. What are government's plans after or post-COVID-19 to build back the economy? Prime Minister? Thank you so much for that question, and to the St. Martiner or whoever sent it on via our Facebook page. You know, it is very, very interesting. Many people feel like maybe the ministers are not as involved as they should be in this COVID-19 response. But it was made very clear to me during this week when we were having some meetings that they have a very key role to play in the recovery of St. Martin. And I must say, I'm very proud to say that after a couple of meetings held this week, that between them having to deal also with our pending governing program, which is being adapted to the COVID situation, the ministers are focused on the recovery. I have had several discussions with individual ministers, and in the coming weeks, the general public will be hearing from these ministers directly as they're working in the task force to plan and prepare for St. Martin's recovery as we come out of this COVID-19 experience. As I said, I think Wednesday, during our press briefing with the ministers, I am looking for us to squash this thing by June 1st. I know I'm being very ambitious. I didn't see Ava jerk her head up, so maybe I'm still on track. They know I'm a very idealistic thinking person, and I have a lot of faith that with the persons in the community complying, that we will reach where we need to go. And so sooner, before that time for sure, the public will know what St. Martin's recovery plan is. And I must say, of course, a lot is contingent upon the assistance we receive and how we receive it, as well as the conditions that may be attached thereto. And today I'm pleased to say that I got a call from Carnival Corp. They are, you know, even though they have an order to stay and not sail, and we still have our automatic saying you may not arrive, they are asking what plans we're putting in place to be able to welcome back tourists. So for me, that is a good sign that there are still persons wanting to come to St. Martin once this is over, and we just have to do everything within our power to maintain very strict measures so that we can continue to protect our population. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. This is the last opportunity we have to close off our press conference because we are coming up on the end of the hour. Prime Minister, I give you the floor for the final words to present. Prime Minister, you have the floor. Thank you, Cedric. Firstly, let me give a big thank you to the ESF coordinators and their support that are here in this press conference with me. It is a weekly occurrence that we would like to maintain as the EOC to be able to continue to update the general public from the professional perspective so that you will know that every decision taken is taken with the consideration of specifically these 4 ESFs in mind, with of course the leading one being the health aspect. This is a disaster of international concerns, and we do not want anyone to lose sight of that fact. Every decision taken must be taken with that in the forefront. And then secondly, with the feasibility of enforcement of the measures.
I would like to say a great big thank you to all of the frontliners, and I consider that to be all of the medical health professionals, especially again CPS and the ambulance who are constantly on the front line, St. Martin Medical Center, the White and Yellow Cross, the district nursing, and all those others who are contributing, fire department, all of the justice workers, not just the police. And I want to say, of course, to be able to have these people working, you need a lot of background persons. So you need administration, you need the persons who are cleaning the offices, cleaning the facilities where the medical personnel have to work to maintain that they remain healthy during this COVID-19 crisis. Of course, I heard burnout mentioned. Burnout can happen across all scopes of this, and we are also looking into getting assistance on all fronts for all of our frontliners. But I want to thank also the security guards and all those other persons who are going out to assist us with the food distribution, who are going out to ensure that we can shop for food, and those who are enforcing the regulations that we put in place. So besides the police, also the controllers from TIAC and all other controllers, VSR, etc. I appreciate the hard work that it takes of a community to get this going. And Miguel already big up Dutch Quarter, and I mentioned Dutch Quarter yesterday, so I'm not going to thank them again, but they might say I'm biased because that's where I live. But I believe that if it's happening in Dutch Quarter, it's happening everywhere. Throughout our community, that means our media blitz has been working. Every opportunity we've taken to inform the population, they appreciate it and they're putting it into practice. We must also thank Arena Base Cafe, who has been donating food to frontliners, and people do not know how important that is. Some persons were a little annoyed when we had frontliners getting special circumstances to be able to shop, and that is because of the times that many of them are shopping and the fact that they would have to go right back into the front line to do their work. In the coming week, we will allow them to do their shopping on the days there's more than one day. It's not like we're on a total shutdown. So they will be going with the general population. But I would ask you as community members, I'm not putting it in the regulation, but if you see a frontliner, I would give them the opportunity to go ahead so that they would be able to serve us quicker and get back to work. I would like to reiterate my favorite word, that faith over fear conquers mountains. When we have the faith that we will get out of this and get out of it good, get out of it healthy, get out of it stronger than we were before, it will happen. If we continue to think negative thoughts, negative things will happen. If we continue to do as you've been doing, send in great suggestions, they are taken along. The EOC appreciates everybody's contributions, including from the Council of Ministers and from members of Parliament. FENA is also telling me to say something about KB, that they're also doing the social distancing. Oh, tomorrow. No. Yes.
Tomorrow
the social. KB. Yes, tomorrow the community outreach program of CPS, and I have to thank their frontliners as well, because they have another big group of persons working within the communities, going ahead of time. And so I'm hoping they did a good job today of talking to the residents in the KB area to be ready for when CPS comes through, to be ready to be tested. If you are feeling symptoms and you have not yet registered with CPS, now is your opportunity to do so and be tested the same day. This will give you a great idea of your status, and I think education is power. When you know, you will know how to treat yourself, you will know how to, the CPS will give you medication as well, or suggestions on how to help take care of yourself during this time so that you do not end up in critical care at the hospital. That is our goal. Even though we've increased our capacity at the hospital, we would be very, very happy if we keep it under occupied. Let's call it that. We are St. Martin strong. Several persons wanted clarifications on what will be open. That will be done tomorrow. But suffice it to say that when we talk about food, other stores such as health food stores will also be able to be open to sell food. And I would like to also mention that Something that wasn't mentioned before, fisheries and agriculture has been added to our addendum to allow all our fishermen to go out. Today I got many calls, I got many thank yous from the fishermen who were not going out because they were adhering to the rules. Make sure to, if you're going out by more than one, that you stay socially distanced, even in the water. And when you come out, ensure that when you are selling your fish, that you're doing so and maintain the highest possible levels of hygiene. Deliveries are still the number one way that I would like us to go, and I would like to encourage all supermarkets, food stores, and even those persons selling masks. Several persons have submitted, oh, we're selling these masks and we're selling these masks, but I'm not allowing you to open a business that is not a medical facility or a supermarket to sell them. So you will have to either sell them online and deliver, or be at the supermarkets, the grocery stores, and sell them there. Maybe even make a deal with the grocery stores to sell them, but of course not ripping the people off. I heard about some crazy stories about $10 for a mask today. So please don't do that. Remember your fellow man. We are as strong as our weakest link. And so with all of us working together, we can get through this. Faith over fear, we are St. Martin strong. God bless you, St. Martin.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for your closing remarks. Members of the media, I want to thank you for your participation, and of course to the general public that post their questions via Facebook Live. Thank you very much for sending in your questions. And to the members of our panel, starting of course with our Prime Minister and Chair of the Emergency Operations Center, the Honorable Severia Jacobs, Secretary General of the Ministry of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, and our ESF 7 Coordinator, Ms. Joy Arnell, Secretary General of the Ministry of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Telecommunications and Transportation, and ESF 10 Coordinator, Mr. Miguel DeWeaver, Police Chief Commissioner and Coordinator of ESF 5, Mr. Carl John, our epidemiologist and head of the Department of Collective Prevention Services, Mrs. Ava Lister DeWeaver, and of course the head of our Public Health and ESF 6 Coordinator, Ms. Fenna Arnell. Thank you very much for your participation in today's Emergency Operations Center's press conference. And to our viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning in and being a part of this virtual press conference of the Emergency Operations Center for today, Friday, April 17th, 2020. If you've missed the broadcast, we, of course, will invite you to tune in to St. Martin Cable TV, channel 115, St. Martin Gov Radio, 107.9 FM. Be sure to go online to our Facebook page, facebook.com/SXMGOV, and of course, the official YouTube channel of the Government of St. Martin, that is Government of St. Martin. On behalf of the Department of Communication and, of course, the members of the Emergency Operations Center, I'm Cedric Peterson. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend.